my name's April Long and I'm the CEO of Smart Recovery Australia. I'm joining you from Awabakal country. I'm a proud First Nations Australian. I identify as a lesbian and I use the pronouns of they, them.
How do you cope with the stresses of life? Many of us manage using alcohol and other drugs. Or maybe gambling gives you some relief. While getting control of addictive behaviours can seem overwhelming, making healthy changes doesn't have to be an all-or-nothing approach. You can improve your lifestyle in a way that works for you through free practical support groups at Smart Recovery. Set weekly goals that work for you. For some people, that might mean winding back to a more manageable use, whether that's some or none. Connect with our safe and non-judgmental support groups, either in person or online, and learn practical, evidence-based tools to move forward with your life in a way that works for you. Choose your own path to a healthier future at smartrecoveryaustralia.com.au.
Welcome to Queer Conversation, April. You are the CEO for an organization called Smart Recovery.
Yeah, so Smart Recovery is a national support service. So we support all Australians who are struggling with addiction or any problematic behaviour where they want to come and get some support. It's a mutual aid group environment. So we currently run 225 meetings across the country. And what we've really identified is the need to grow our LGBTIQ plus meetings, because as you can imagine, the things that our community members might want to talk about that's impacting them, is things like stigma, social exclusion, discrimination. And it's really important that we have a group where community members can come and get support from their community, by their community, and be able to share openly in a really safe and supportive environment. So prior to this funding, we were just running one LGBTIQ specific meeting and one trans specific meeting. And we've had feedback from participants around how important that is for them to, know that it's a queer, safe space where they can share what's going on for them in their life without judgment. So this extra 40,000 that we've been able to receive from the ACT government will go a really long way to actually growing the number of meetings that we have, in the ACT, but also nationally across the country, because we know that, addiction rates, mental health outcomes are much more higher for people in our community. So we need to make sure that we've got those targeted supports.
So what are the statistics for the LGBTQI community in specifics of substance abuse?
Yeah, look, the data gap is a really important issue. The first most significant thing that we have is we actually don't have a national data set, because our census doesn't currently actually ask the question, are you an LGBTIQ person? There was some improvements made where if you are in a relationship and you live in the same household, we were able to get that data. And that was in 2016, which showed that we have 47,000 same-sex couples. But obviously we know without the data, you can't have policies and programs and funding. So the data is a big issue. We do have some from the Australian Institute of Health and Wellbeing survey. So they do a national drug household survey, which shows that consistently there are higher substance use disorders in our community. And that's something that's been shown to be higher over a really long period of time, particularly when you look at illicit drug use. There are some positive that, risky drinking is decreasing and smoking is decreasing. However, proportionate to heterosexual counterparts in these health surveys that have been done, we have got higher rates of psychological distress, and then, addiction and the need for tailored support. The problem that we have is when we don't have a complete data set, we're not actually asking the question at a national level, that really flows on so that organisations like Smart Recovery and, all of our incredible community-based LGBTIQ organisations really struggle to get funding, because we can't actually show how many LGBTIQ plus Australians we have in this country. And I think that is a fundamental barrier. But of the smaller surveys done by the Australian Institute of Health and Wellbeing, we know that the rates are a lot higher. And of course, we see that in the kind of mental health suicide specific research that's done as well. So there's a lot of research at the moment looking at the interconnectedness between substance use disorders or problematic behaviours, and then also, mental health. So it's great to see that happening, but we've still got quite a long way to go so that I can answer your question accurately and say, well, yeah, how many of our community members are struggling? And more importantly, how many aren't actually accessing the services and supports they need? Because we know when you have an LGBTIQ specific service, it's seen to be twice as effective. But only 7% of our current services in the addiction and mental health space actually have targeted programs, which is what we're really trying to change with this grant.
Am I wrong to assume that there would be a different type of substance abuse for gay men versus lesbians?
Yeah, look, it's again, we have that big data gap, so it's hard to even get the baseline picture, let alone kind of being able to drill down into particular subsets like lesbian women or gay men. So, the thing that we do know, though, for us at Smart Recovery is that it actually doesn't matter about the substance. So in our meetings, somebody could be there for opioid use, somebody could be there for drinking, somebody could be there for cocaine use. We actually focus on the behaviour that sits underneath. So, what is it that has resulted in this individual choosing to, smoke cannabis in a way that's having a negative impact on their life? So we very much focus on those individual goals that they want to set, and that might be different for a gay man, for it is for a lesbian, for example. So we really empower the individuals in the group to actually identify for themselves, well, what does positive change look like for you, in the next 7 days? What can you actually put in place to achieve your goals? We're not an abstinence-based program, so we're a goal-based. Some people may choose that. But I guess to your point around different members of the community, that's why we have a trans-specific group, because, the stresses or the, issues for trans community members is very different to other community members. And so when you have a recovery group where it's peer support, well, of course, the tips and strategies and things that another trans person or another gay man is going to share with a gay man is going to have more relevance because they've lived it. That's their lived experience. I'll give you a really good personal example from, my relationship and being in a family with, two mums. Recently we were at the park. Our son's 2.5 years old, just trying to enjoy the park like every other tired parent on an early morning. And a stranger at the park, said, "Oh, Dad must be tall." And I said, "Oh, no, Kyson has two mums." And my partner was, sitting by closely at the time. And this individual proceeded to keep asking, so does he have anything to do with the dad? And I said, "No, Kyson doesn't have a dad. He has two mums and a donor that helped us create our family." And this kept going on. And, it was one of those conversations as a tired parent you don't want to be having. But that experience and I guess the stress and the particular interaction I had is probably very different to gay dads, they may not have had that experience. So it's important when we talk about mutual aid and recovery and peer support that it's by the community for the community. It's why we have veteran specific groups, and we have a pilot specific groups, because what's going on in their life is particular to that group. So we certainly do see different research that's looked at different groups, but we just don't have that level of detail yet, because we don't have that overarching data set that actually at a base level just counts us in the country around how many LGBTIQ plus Australians there are. So I think that's a big fundamental challenge for us. We haven't even had the conversation is that there is a lot of stigma and shame around that, where, people are less likely then to reach out for help. We have to start having these conversations in our communities and, in a really safe way. And, we should be able to say and ask the question, well, how does this, affect our gay brothers and sisters? How does this affect our trans brothers and sisters? How does this affect, lesbian women? Like, that's the question that should be being asked, and we should have the answers. If we're looking at gender diverse people, how does this impact? But we're such at the kind of start of this conversation, and as I said, that research gap that we're just asking to be counted in our national census, so that we actually have this data, because until we do, we can't have a specific, say, opioid program for gay men. We don't know if marijuana, and cannabis usage is problematic for lesbian women versus, the trans community. We just actually don't have that information, which why it makes it so hard to have tailored services and supports. And, it's fantastic that the ACT government is leading the way. And I think, when you look at policy and human rights and change for our community, it's always been the ACT kind of leading the way, in banning gay conversion therapy and recognising civil unions in, before marriage equality. It sometimes takes a little bit for the rest of the country to catch up. But when you look at the suicide rates and you look at how mental health is impacted, I think it's a real shame that, you and I can't have this conversation in a way where there are more statistics and we are able to talk about it. But I think you're right. We have to be able to talk about it in our community as well. And that stigma and shame, does actually stop people getting help. Because we simply don't have the conversations in a safe way. And that's really what the groups are about is, you could be at any stage of your journey. I mean, anyone listening to this podcast now might be just like, okay, a little bit sober curious, or I think this might be having an impact in my life, but I'm not sure. Or in that kind of pre-contemplative stage of, well, I want to get help, but I'm not sure what that will mean, because, for the last 10, 15 years, the only way I've coped with my family, disowning me, discriminating against me, is I have self-medicated with drugs and alcohol. That's the only way I've, found my community is through the nightclub scene or, through this social group. And how do I rebuild that? How do I get that sense of self and, be a proud non-binary person or a proud gay man, or because I've always had these ways of coping. And that's why we use CBT and motivational interviewing in our groups, because again, it's actually not about the substance. It's about, well, how are you coping with what's going on in your life? And, what's the benefits of that? There are benefits of particular substance uses, but what's the consequences of that? How's it actually having an impact in your life?
You are not referring to substance abuse. You are referring to substance use throughout your language.
That's correct, yes.
So very, very deliberate.
Yeah, as I said, unlike other mutual aid support groups that might be abstinence-based, we welcome anyone where they're at in their journey. And a lot of, community members who come along to Smart Recovery might also go to AA. They might also be using pharmaceutical supports in order to, manage. So, we really work from a harm minimisation framework, and it's about that individual setting goals for themselves. What does that look like for you? Somebody might say, well, I just want to reduce the amount that I'm drinking, or I want to smoke less. I'm not ready to completely stop doing that. This is the way it's having a harmful, impact. So we work with the individual exactly where they're at. And, what we're trying to do is, give them some more tools. And we talk a lot about the smart tools that they can actually use to improve their life. The facilitator's not there saying you must do this or you must do that. And it's really the group coming up with, okay, well, how did you do Mardi Gras sober? Let's talk about that. How was that for you? Okay, these are the things I did, It's actually bringing those real life, examples. Okay, you're meeting your partner's family. That they're not, 100% supportive of your relationship. This is how we've dealt with it in the past, instead of self-medicating or so it's being able to have those real conversations. I shared that story around, my young child at the park. My partner and I have had a lot of discrimination that's, quite particular to us. But when you share those stories in a way that's around, trying to help and support others, it's actually very healing for everybody in the room, because you're actually there for your own recovery, but for everybody else's recovery as well. I have a lot of lived experience of addiction within my own family. And, I'm really passionate about, sharing the stories in a way that's not kind of re-triggering or traumatizing and those kind of war stories, but rather to raise awareness and actually go, well, yeah, I've experienced that too, and this is how it impacted me. I think the plebiscite was amazing. We got a great vote, but it was also extremely traumatic. I remember heading off to Bunnings like every good lesbian, and my partner was at home and seeing vote no in the sky, and having to have that conversation with her, don't go outside until I get home. It was a really difficult time for our community. And it continues to be, with the amount of transphobia that we're seeing. And so, I think some people deal with that stress in different ways. And, if it's not working for them and it's unhealthy and they are having, quite significant mental distress or depression, we know we're better at having conversations around mental health now. But I still think addiction, it's still a taboo subject. We don't do it as well as we could or should, because there's still some, stigma there. Well, I'm going to be labelled an alcoholic, or I'm going to be labelled an addict. People are going to think I'm not successful. I'm not a good mum. I'm not. We still have a long way to go, I think, to breaking down some of those barriers.
So now with this grant you received, $40,000, what are your plans are to create more meetings specifically for the LGBTQI plus community, but you also are investing in training facilitators. In regards to the first part of the meetings, is that already been implemented, or is that about to happen? What's the timeline with that?
Yeah, so it's about to happen. The project will go for about 14 months, and that's really the training and getting everyone up and running. So we'll be training 10 facilitators who will then be able to deliver meetings. So those meetings can be face-to-face or they can be online, which is fantastic because it means that people can join from anywhere and find their community and find that support. So at the moment, as I said, we've only got those 2 groups running at the moment. So we really want to have at least 5 groups running, hopefully 10 groups running, and, starting to get some more specific groups. Like we have women's only meetings, we have men's only meetings. There could absolutely be, a gay men's meeting so that people can have a little bit more targeted support from their community. So we've been working with Meridian in the ACT, who have been leading those groups. But there's a range of LGBTIQ community organisations that could be running these groups. We're just about to train up ACON, which is really exciting. But I think sometimes, when we talk about this work, it's left to the AOD sector, the alcohol and other drug sector, or the health sector. But, if you're, running family services or, any, community-based support, then this is something else that you can offer to community members, whether it's at a community centre. So we really want to get a diversity of people trained up. And of course, if anyone's listening and they're thinking of being a facilitator, you can do it as a volunteer. You might be in your own recovery journey. And that's something that's really special about SMART, is that once you've got your own behaviour of concern, you can actually be trained to be a facilitator. And we've got great examples around the country where people have now kind of taken over their own meeting as the facilitator. They've graduated. So they're now giving back in their recovery. So it is, of course, we'll be training those organisations, but anyone who's listening going, I think this could be something where I give back to my community because I'm in my own recovery and I'm on my journey and I really want to give back, then they can head to our website and, sign up to be a facilitator as well. So we'll be training a minimum of 10 facilitators. Of course, if there's more interest, then, we'd love to train even more. I thought it might be nice just to share with you what some of our community members have said about LGBTIQ meetings. So there's a couple of quotes that I really love, and these have come from the participants of the current groups. I really feel the queer love and it's a safe space. I like talking to people from my community and not feeling judged. And then another told us, this is the piece of the puzzle that was missing from my recovery, shared experiences, and it's cathartic. So, some people that come to SMART have tried lots of different things. As I mentioned before, they might go to AA, they might be seeing their GP. It's just something else you can kind of have in your bag around, using some of the techniques, and it might, make a big difference in somebody's recovery.
Another question I had, if you are looking for joining one of those groups, how is that structured? Do you pay for that, or is that free? How do you find it?
Groups are completely free, and we have a new amazing meeting finder on our website. So you literally go to the Smart Recovery website and you find a meeting and you put your postcode in and it'll bring up all of the specific meetings, and you can actually filter down for LGBTIQ specific, as I mentioned, men's specific, women's, veterans, our First Nations meetings. So as I said, it's really important that it's by the community for the community. Encourage anyone who's listening, as I said, doesn't matter where you are in those stages of change, even if you're just thinking about it, then head to our website. And, if you're a loved one of someone who you think might be struggling, we also have a family and friends program. And that's really about you as the support person or the carer or the loved one, making sure that you get the support you need, because, it can be, quite difficult to be supporting somebody who's in recovery as well. And you need to look after yourself before you can look after others. So that's also available, the family and friends meetings on our website.
Fantastic. So the website is smartrecovery.org?
.au, yes.
.org.au.
Because the interesting thing about Smart Recovery is we are an international organisation. So as part of this grant, we designed up our LGBTIQ logo, and its recovery is for everyone. And we put the Smart logo in the rainbow colours, and straight away Smart Recovery UK and Smart Recovery US got in touch, and they were like, we want to do this for Pride Week, we really want to use this. And so we do have an international community, which is great because, addiction doesn't discriminate in terms of, culture or sexuality or gender. It's a global challenge. It's a global, we say it's the global pandemic because, it is a health issue that affects everybody. It just happens to be that because of, as I mentioned, the discrimination, the social isolation, and the things that our community have had to, live with and continue to live with, that we do see higher rates of distress in our community and the need for more targeted support.
Well, fantastic that you have put all this in motion with applying for the grant, and that the grant has come through, and now hopefully there are, we'll see more meetings pop up and facilitators joining and being trained. This is fantastic work that Smart Recovery is doing, and you've been spearheading that. How long have you been with Smart Recovery as a CEO?
Almost 12 months. So, it's been a fantastic 12 months. And, our number one principle under our strategic plan is diversity. And it's something that I'm really, personally committed to. And I was really proud to see that, we got the grant and to see those LGBTIQ meetings increase, because, I know from my own community that this is something that we need, and we need it in a way that's non-judgmental, that meets people where they're at. There isn't any religious overtones. We're not, any religious person of faith or not can come to a meeting and share their story and get support without any of that judgment, and, just real life stories and real life support.
Well, thank you so much for your work, April, and thanks for joining us today on Queer Conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us and promoting the message. And looking forward to seeing more community members access Smart Recovery if they need it.